Wow. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. I am Deidre with the Cleveland International Film Festival, and I'm so honored to introduce the daughter of a lost bird, filmmaker and producer and director, Brooke Pepion Swaney. Yes. Thank you. As well as the film editor, Kristen Swanbeck. So we will have about 10 to 15 minutes for a Q&A here in this space. And then I invite you to join us at the Idea Center Gun Studio, just outside the door, where we will go to a chat room conversation with our community partners, the Lake Erie Native American Council, as well as the Adoption Network, for a panel discussion that's led by our community partners. But for now, we will have a Q&A. We have our volunteers in the red coats with microphones. If you have a question, just raise your hand, and they will come to you with the microphone. Okay, we have a question in the back.
So, like most bureaucracies, it is taking a long time, but she is in process of enrolling. So yes, that is an ongoing thing.
Okay. And if you have a question, please wait for someone with the red coat with the microphone, just so that everyone can hear your question. If a question in the back, if someone with a microphone could. Thank you.
Hi, I thought I heard April say that she received a letter from her birth mother and her birth father, but she only addressed meeting her birth father. Can you elaborate on what happened with her birth mom?
Sure. So, kind of, well, I don't know, similar to Kendra, she had an interest in, meeting one of her birth parents. And I think because, she never grew up with a father figure really, Chattiscatum really loomed large in, her consciousness. Her birth mother was non-native. She was a white Dutch American woman that grew up in Bellingham. And she has a relationship with her as well. But when she first met her birth father, it was actually at also her birth mother's house at the time. So they did meet, all three of them, in that moment.
So I think kind of towards the end, you said really beautifully how this story is one that does not have a finite ending because it's going to be very ongoing. How did you determine what the end of this film would look like, or when did you feel, because I know making a documentary, you really never feel like the book ends. So how did you guys determine that in the process of creating this?
Well, I'll start answering the question, and then Kristen can jump in. I mean, part of needing to finish the film was like purely logistical. Like, we got funding from Vision Maker Media. There was a very specific term to the amount of funding where we had to contractually deliver the film. So that certainly played a part in it. Yeah.
Yeah, we edited it over 7 years, and we knew that we needed some more information as Kendra was like living her life and going through her own journey. And I think like the very ending we didn't foresee that happening. We just happened to be there with Kendra and the welcoming home ceremony happened. And I think
we were trying to get archival footage,
yeah,
actually.
Which we couldn't get at the time. But so it just happened that welcoming home ceremony occurred, and I think we both just intuitively felt, well, this is the right place. Because life is just gonna always keep on happening. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. There's 2 dueling questions.
Thank you. The Indian Child Welfare Act is being contested And
That's
the
correct.
Supreme Court will be deciding, I don't know exactly what, but your film, of course, started before I was aware about this. So is there anything you want to say about the need for more understanding about stories like you're showing?
Yeah, absolutely. So, while, we explain in the film that, Kendra, like the Indian Child Welfare Act didn't specifically apply to Kendra, had April been enrolled, then ICWA would have applied when she was born, because she was born the first year that ICWA came into effect and became the law of the land. So she should have gone through, those processes had April been enrolled, but of course, she was, part of this diaspora of children who had been removed, and her rights to her tribe and her tribal citizenship, therefore been erased. But currently, with the film, we're hoping that it will serve as an example as to why it's incredibly important to keep Indigenous children connected with their tribal nations. There's a whole host of benefits to doing that. And now, what the opposition is arguing about the law is that it's race-based. But what a lot of Americans don't necessarily understand about Indigenous nations in this country is that we are political citizens of sovereign nations. It's like, we have dual citizenship, say in France or in Chile or somewhere. So negating that ability to be a citizenship of our tribe is I feel morally wrong. And so these attacks on ICWA and using this rhetoric that it's race-based is also just fundamentally incorrect about how the law treats Native people in the country. Thank you.
I had a question about the editing, because you mentioned it was done over a period of 7 years. Is there anything that was left out or just didn't go anywhere that you wish you could have kept in but couldn't?
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff that was left out. For instance, like April's birth mother, that was a choice because it didn't seem pertinent to the emotional story and journey of what we were tracking, because she was so much closer with her birth father. Trying to think if there's any, there was a lot of little stuff, and it was a process of figuring it out as we were going along, and we weren't working on it consistently for 7 years. It was off and on.
Yeah, and at one point, we did some interviews with Kendra and other Indigenous adoptees. So, we reached out actually to a Lummi individual who was also adopted out and did a deep dive interview with him, and then also with a Blackfeet individual in Missoula, which is the town where Kendra lives. And it didn't like totally kind of gel into the narrative. It was a little distracting. So we could, and it was also like the puzzle of trying to figure out where to fit it in. It just didn't feel like it fit.
Yeah, and Kendra also, she's a doula and works in birthing, which is incredibly interesting, but we couldn't, that was one thing that we didn't really have the material to support it. We didn't feel that it wasn't necessary to her own emotional journey. Yeah, I think we were just really tracking Kendra's journey as she was living her life.
In the back. There's two in the back.
Whoever gets the mic first, probably.
And now I'm trying to think of like the other scenes that.
So many questions. Thank you. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your editing. Thank you for telling a story that needs to be told on so many levels at this time.
Thank you.
For those of us who grew up white, whether we came from wealth, whether we came as refugees or from families of refugees, for those of us who recognize and realize we benefit every day from white privilege, white skin privilege, one, how can we support you in your work? And two, are there other ideas or thoughts for reparations, be it monetary, physical, emotional, spiritual? Do you have any other suggestions for things that we might think about or research or do?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for asking this question about allyship. So, if you're specifically interested in the work of protecting ICWA, I think a great organization would be to donate to the National Indian Child Welfare Association. And they're huge advocates. It's a nonprofit organization. They actually helped write the law. So I would recommend them being one. And then, of course, I think it's always important to look locally. Where can you support, local indigenous people? And here we have the Lake Erie Native American Center. And so I think, or Council, sorry. So I think that is also a great place to start, is to, ask yourself, what indigenous community do I inhabit? Because all of this land is indigenous land, and for the most part, many indigenous people are displaced from their land, and so how can you do something to support our causes?
First, I want to thank you very much for a beautiful movie. Thank you very much. My question is very trivial, and I know if I don't ask you now, I'll never get the answer. What was she like with her siblings and her father?
Who?
Kendra.
Kendra? What is she like?
I mean, what was her relationship like with her siblings?
Oh.
I didn't see that at all in the movie, but I did
right.
see siblings in the photographs.
Yeah, yes. So Kendra has a younger brother, so their dynamic is very much like older sister, younger brother situation. They have very different personalities. Kendra kind of emulates in some ways her birth mother's whole vibe. She's a little more free-spirited or artistic, and her brother is different. He's not not the same, like siblings. And then her parents are her parents. She has a close relationship with them. They moved to Montana after her children were born to, be the one of the sets of grandparents. They're very fortunate because actually they have their two sets of grandparents helping raise, their kids.
Thank you.
There's somebody in the back.
Hi, I have more of a question, comment. One of the most profound moments in the film for me was when Kendra's adopted parents were describing how they felt like how can I put it? That they kind of weren't part of the problem of what happened with the Indian adoptions. Can you please comment on that, because it really struck me and it hurt me, I guess I can say, and I appreciate you putting that in the film.
Well, thank you. That how we portray Kendra's parents was very important to us, and really giving them the opportunity to speak for themselves was also very important. I feel that and this is my opinion, that as non-Indigenous parents, I understand that you cannot necessarily take on a totally different culture than your own and teach that to your children. It's almost like a catch-22 situation of, how do I raise a child who is from another culture with that culture that is not my own? I think it's incredibly difficult. And so the fact that they recognize that they wanted to raise her as their child, with their traditions and their worldview. That is a very honest thing. I don't think it's right or wrong. That's just what they did. Now, for me, as an Indigenous person, being, raised in this kind of extended family where, there's not just this nuclear family. And I do think that's like true for other cultures, that it's not just your mom and dad who shape you as a child. It's sometimes your community, right, or your family community. And so to me, it's like very strange to kind of think of a child like as a piece of property or kind of this ownership, because there's so many influences that help a child grow. Yeah.
Good evening.
Hello.
My question sort of dovetails off that a little bit, and I'm thinking about Kendra's children, and if Kendra is awarded citizenship, does that extend to her children? And just thinking about the sustainability of the legacy.
So that's a big question that gets into the issue of blood quantum, which is a totally colonized way of looking at Indigenous people. The United States government, when they took many Indigenous people and shoved them onto reservations, when people were put on reservations, they started a rolls process where they documented every single person who was put on that reservation and their blood quantum, like how native they were, kind of pedigreeing people like you would dogs. Yeah, so this blood quantum thing and how native are you thing, it's just incredibly problematic, and the way that tribes determine their membership should be left to tribes, not this idea of blood quantum. Yes, card-carrying member right here. I also have a card too. And a lot of tribes, because they follow the federal, there's a very complicated relationship with tribes and federal agencies about membership. There's kind of this rule of thumb of a quarter blood quantum. You have to have a quarter of your tribe to be able to enroll. And because Kendra is, I think she is a quarter technically, she can enroll, but because she's had children with a white person, she can't enroll her children. They are seen as descendants. However, if the tribe were to decide to move away from this, blood quantum, way of enrolling people, they would be eligible for membership because, there are tribal members that can be linked to her. Another thing about blood quantum is there's a lot of studies being done that it basically is, over time, is going to wipe out, Native people, unless, you do something about it. So, for example, the Cherokee Nation, they do something called lineal descent. So if you can point to a very specific ancestor, then you are still considered a member of that tribe. So it differs from tribe to tribe. Yeah.
I think that's very wrong.
We have time for one final question. We have one question in the back.
In the back.
Hi. Okay, so my question kind of goes along with what you were just saying. My sister and I are from a Cherokee Nation. Our mother was adopted away, much like April. And what you were saying about the Cherokee, it's very, very difficult to get recognized or any information. Since she was adopted, we don't have any information on an ancestor bridge.
Yeah.
So, I was just saying that you're right, it's awful. And, we're African American, which also makes it difficult to get information on our ancestor bridge.
Right,
And
yeah.
then we don't have information on our Cherokee bridge either.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you all so much for sticking around for our Q&A. We would love for this conversation to continue, and I'd like to invite you all to join us at the Idea Center studio. Our community partners, the Lake Erie Native American Council, as well as the Adoption Network, will be leading a conversation that's moderated by WKSU Idea Stream Public Media's Amanda Rabinowitz, who will moderate a conversation with Brooke, with Cynthia Connolly of the Lake Erie Native American Council, as well as Tracy Onders of the Cleveland Adoption Network. We have a volunteer in the front row with the handy sign that says "Follow me," so you're all welcome. Please follow her to the auditorium just next door, and we will see you there. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.